I was introduced into real estate. I was asked to come into it, and at the time that I was asked to come in, I was going through a very difficult period of my life relationally, and a guy saw something in me that I didn't even know about myself, and he just said, "Hey man," he said, "I think you would be an amazing real estate agent," and he's like, "I want you to come work for me." And I never even thought about real estate before, but here was somebody saying that he thought I could be successful, and he was successful. So I was like, okay, I'll give this thing a try. Like, what else do I have to do? I didn't go to college. Like, it's like, oh, I could wait tables, I could do this, or I could do that.
Yeah. How old were you at the time?
21. So 21, almost 22. I got licensed and kind of made that full. I was running another business at the time, and I had 4 different bosses. Each boss or investor wanted the business to do something different, and he was one of them. And he had a real estate company. He was like, "Look, dude, you're gonna make twice as much money in real estate working half as hard." And he's like, "You're gonna do great." So I transitioned out of that business that I was running into this career of real estate, and started on January 1st. Got licensed in 2001. Got 2001. Started on January 1st, 2002, and went after it. Was nominated Rookie of my first year in my MLS. Just did really well out of the gate. I was the youngest person in my office by more than 30 years. Awesome. So when I first started, it was like all these OGs, and it was called Fleming Real Estate. It was in upstate New York, and we were like the #1 independent in our marketplace at that time, and did a lot of advertising in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, a lot of weekend people coming up, and that was like my whole thing, right? Like I grew up there, I loved the area, and it was super fun, and I found a natural affinity to it. I realized I was good at it, I enjoyed it, all these things. So I reconnected with my wife. We dated in high school. I was an idiot then. I matured a little bit. I came back for her. She gave me a second chance, and we ultimately got married in 2006. And I had a good career. I made 6 figures or more every year in real estate, which going back 20 some years ago, that was a lot of money then. And I said, let's get out of here. Like, we can do anything.
And you're like 25, 26 right now.
Yeah. And I'm like, let's go to North Carolina. And my mom and dad had planned on retiring down there to Lake Norman, north of the Charlotte marketplace. So we go down to North Carolina, and I get there. I'm like, this is gonna be great. There's so many houses here comparatively to where we were in upstate New York. So many sales happening. It was like big business. And I got down there and I fell on my face, and I literally couldn't get traction. I was waiting tables. I was working for this technology company, and I was trying to be a realtor, and I was just like going into debt every single month.
And that was like when the market crashed.
Yeah.
Yep. My marriage was rough, to say the least. And the market crashed in 2007, trying to like make it through that. And ultimately I just didn't know like how I was going to get myself out of the hole I was in. And one day I was in my real estate company, and a guy walked in, and he had tickets to a Craig Proctor conference. And he said, "Hey, I can bring a guest for $500, and you can ride with me, and we'll drive 9 hours from Charlotte down to Orlando, and we'll go to this event." So I borrowed $500. I got a ticket. I went down there, and I was blown away. I was like, here's people, like hundreds and hundreds of people making a ton of money in real estate, money that I couldn't even like wrap my head around at the time. I'm just trying to sell a house to like pay my bills. And people are talking about selling like 5, 10, 15, 30 houses a month. And it was just like more than I could process, but I processed enough to know that people were where I wanted to be, and they had a plan to get there, and I was sold out. I left that conference with 2 other guys in that car. Those 2 guys were kind of like rebuilding the plan on the way home. Like, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm sitting in the back seat thinking like, you guys are idiots. Like, we just went to a conference. They gave us a plan. You're trying to change the plan, and you suck. You know what I mean? Like, you're barely surviving too. So I just said, I'm just going to do everything they tell me to do. And then if it doesn't work, I can tell them it's their fault. So I signed up for all the coaching on money I didn't have, on credit cards that would have, bounced if they hit them. And they said, "Hey, we're not going to charge you for 90 days. And I dove in with both feet, and I made more money in the next 90 days than I'd ever made in a year before.
Following their plan.
Following their plan to a T. And then I was, hooked on coaching ever after that. Joined a bunch of programs. I've been involved in just about everyone out there. I learned some really great things from some of them. I learned some things I didn't want from others. And I just kept, stacking the bricks. Ultimately started my own independent real estate company, had a mortgage branch as well, part owner in a title company. I was an original founding member of Commissions Inc., which is a real estate technology. Just got to do a lot of cool stuff as my my business continued to grow. Met a lot of great people, and ultimately was convinced that the independent brokerage was the way forward for me, and that would be the rest of my career. And I was sold out on that model. We built an amazing brand. We took our team from Remax at the time over to this new independent. We doubled our business. We doubled it again the following year. I took myself out of production completely while increasing my profitability. I took myself out of the day-to-day by implementing the Traction EOS system. And I was kind of like, this model's amazing and I can help others do it too. Because when I looked under the hood of most real estate businesses, whether it was a team leader or a broker owner, what I found is if we took that broker owner team leader and their personal production out of the equation, most businesses weren't even profitable. And so I started a coaching company on what I did and how I did it, specifically for team leaders, broker owners, and helping them in that segment. And because I was out of the day-to-day, I didn't really need to be in North Carolina anymore. My family and I decided to move around the country, and we got a RV van and we traveled and we did all the national parks. And then this thing called COVID happened, which sidelined us, and we knew we didn't want to go back to North Carolina, and we decided to relocate to Bozeman, Montana. And it was when I relocated to Bozeman, Montana that I was like, well, if I'm never going back to North Carolina and I have all this overhead employee structure there, how do I be responsible with those families there? And I ultimately said, I've either got to sell this business to somebody who's there, or I've got to repurpose it in a way that's more reliable. Because I kept losing my top producers. And when I lose my top producer, it was just like heartbreaking for me, because it was like, man, I invested so much and I changed that person's life for a minute. Like they went from making X to making a lot more than X. And I could see the impact that had on their families and where their kids went to school and what cars they drove and what neighborhoods they lived in. And it was really cool, but it was just like a brief moment of their life.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I don't even know, like, what am I going to do with this thing? And that's when I started to look at EXP, because what I saw was my company was affected by COVID. All the people I coached were affected by COVID, but there was this one company that wasn't affected by COVID. And in fact, it was actually helped by COVID. And it was this company called EXP, who had a really ugly logo at the time. And I didn't think very highly of.
Right.
But I was
horrible colors.
Yeah, so I was curious. So I started asking around, and AJ and I had a good relationship. His wife and my wife were friends, and I started asking him kind of like, well, what about this logo? And like, hey man, I'm really excited that you're making so much money, but like, what's your plan B? Because surely that's not going to last. And he's like, no, he's like, I think it will, and here's why. And I started to look at it for the first time, and a couple things stood out to me. When I realized that EXP wasn't going to replace my brand, but that I could bring my brand over to this platform, and it was better for me, but more importantly, it was better for my agents, I was very curious. Then when I realized that I was doing everything that I needed to do to be successful at EXP already, running my own independent, I was meeting with and recruiting agents regularly, right? And I was doing sales at a high level. And I was losing agents. So what EXP solved for me is they gave me the next step of the journey of my top producers. So when they wanted to leave me, I could still be in business with them.
Yeah.
It gave me a plan B when I was sitting down with my initial agent at a recruiting meeting, because if I sat down with 10 agents, I probably only wanted 3 or 4 in my model, because I was looking for people that had the work ethic, wanted to be held accountable, were willing to do and follow my systems, and were willing to pay me a 50% split. So like, that's a smaller segment than the 100% you sit down with. And I just said, man, if they're not going to join me for everything I offer, the next best option is EXP. So if I'm sitting down with them anyway, I can offer them my team. And if they don't want my team, I can offer them EXP. And I projected out what I thought was a conservative example on like how many I could attract to my team and to EXP as a plan B over a 10-year period.
Yeah.
And what I figured out was, if I just did what I was already doing for 10 years more, the EXP model in 10 years would catch up to me, and I would be making as much from EXP and recruiting and revenue share and stock as I was from my current business.
Yeah.
And what ultimately happened was I joined EXP, and inside my first year, I replicated what I was making in my real estate business in EXP.
Crazy.
Now I have, you know, I'm 3 years and a month in, and now I have like over 2,000 agents, like 2,060 some agents at this moment.
Once you get that traction, it just, the compounding interest concept kicks in.
I sit down with, you know, the who's who of Keller Williams and Remax and Coldwell Banker, and one of the things I love to share with them is I'll show them my dashboard. I'll be like, hey man, I added 72 agents this month. I wasn't responsible for any of them. I didn't have a single conversation with any of those. Well, maybe I did a three-way call, but there's many months where like I personally don't recruit anybody. It just is what it is.
Crazy.
And you know, I went on a 3-week mission trip to Egypt, and I came back, and that month we added 83 agents. But I'll ask these brokers of other brands, I'll say, hey, you're in your brand, you've been there for a lot of years. Let me ask you something just straight up. The number one office for your brand in the world, did they add 83 agents to their roster in the last 30 days? And the answer is 100% no every time. There's no brand that adds that many agents to any single office in a 30-day period, unless there was an acquisition where they like bought another company. And I'll say, well, listen, man, before today, we didn't know each other. You've never met me before. I'm not better than Gary Keller. I'm not better than Dave Liniger. I just have a better model. And my model allows me to scale anywhere infinitely. And EXP does all of the work of that scale. And I get all of the reward for introducing them and bringing them over.